Good evening, folks. This is the Factivist Report for Monday, the 24th of April. We did a couple of short shows before this. We talked about the Heritage Foundation in one of them and some of their tactics and how they're not really research-oriented. We're going to pick up again here with the Heritage Foundation. We're going to talk about more of that, but we're also going to talk about how they form their attacks on the LGBT and transgender community and how it's having far-reaching effects in the country right now. So here's Dave.
So again, I got this idea from a TikToker. Again, Coyote Annie, thank you. I did a shout out to her on the short show too. But I'm mostly not going to talk about the history, other than to say that the Heritage Foundation was primarily the brainchild of one person. He passed away in 2008, but his reach has really is still felt. The guy's name is Paul Weyrich. So let's talk about him for a minute, because he created a network of right-wing bullshit. This man not only founded the Heritage Foundation, which, by the way, was funded by the Coors Brewing industry, ExxonMobil, and Morgan Chase, to just name a few. So that's one thing I actually didn't mention in the short show. The Heritage Foundation is also business driven. And it's weird intermingling between business and Christian nationalism or Christians is very interesting and hypocritical to me, but whatever. So he founded the Heritage Foundation, which is the quote unquote conservative research arm. So he also co-founded the Center for National Policy, which is the bigwig power arm. Let's just say that. They have a bunch of big money power guys. It's, shrouded in mystery, blah, blah, blah. And he also co-founded ALEC, which is the legislative arm. And he also, with Jerry Falwell in the late 90s, the late 70s, 1979, I think it was, founded the Moral Majority, which is the Christian nationalist, megaphone pounding the pulpit propaganda arm. So this guy created a lot. And I'm not going to say much more about him other than everything that the Heritage Foundation supports now, he supported. They didn't really change much. He's anti-climate change. He's anti-LGBT. He made statements like gays are only, they're focused on sex, that kind of stuff. That also, I will get into a little bit farther, that the Boy Scouts of America needs to be pure, and that gays shouldn't be allowed in there. Get into that in a minute. But that kind of thing. So this is where we're going with this. But it started with this guy. Okay. So here's the Heritage Foundation. It's called a think tank, which I don't really understand how you can call it a think tank, because it's not research based. It's just they learn how to skew research, and in their website itself, it says they basically create right-wing talking points. That's what it is. So here's some of the things. So after school shootings, they blame the breakdown of family.
Yes,
okay.
The fact that we have 50 million guns floating around this country, and it has nothing to do with hate. It's the breakdown of the family.
The biggest one I wanted to say, I'm not going to run through all these. I'll do a couple more, but the Heritage Awards prize, a $100,000 award to the Alliance Defending Freedom for the development of the Viewpoint Diversity score, which indexes corporations by their alignment with conservative Christian beliefs and values. Now, this was designated as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center because it supports recriminalization, or it sounds like sodomy laws, of sexual acts between LGBTQ plus adults and the state-sanctioned sterilization of trans people.
Yeah, it's great.
This is what we're talking about. So there's a couple others. Heritage supports secret voter fraud meetings. So we had a conservative lawyer conducting private meetings with chief state election officials to strategize on advancing their shared goal of ensuring the integrity of elections, which we've talked a lot about on this show. They administer in their home states.
Usually it's the right wing that's being arrested for voter fraud.
Right.
So
now this is a ProPublica article that they reference. ProPublica, as you know, did a ton of work, or you may not know actually, did a ton of work on J6 and has done a ton of work on a lot of the election fraud stuff.
they are a very, very credible and excellent news source.
Right. So former Heritage Foundation staff member Jason Steed, who created Heritage's voter fraud database, was quoted saying the purpose behind all of it is, whether it's through legislation or litigation, is to manipulate the election process and structurally advantage one side at the expense of the other. So
Really?
there you go. Ties to the tobacco industry. And again, you know, we're worried about the health of America's youth, right? I'm just saying. Here's the last one I'm going to really get into on this list. I forgot about climate change. Climate change was a big thing for Paul Weyrich, and it always has been for the Heritage Foundation. We'll get to that with Trump's actions, which, by the way, Trump is the Heritage Foundation's man. They will follow him to the gates of hell, which Heritage partners with Trump to staff his administration. So
they did.
Typically, since their inception in 1973, they were in lockstep. As the Republicans moved to wherever they were moving, they supported the president. This president was no different, but they loved this guy. So
he brought to fruition a lot of their things.
Yep. So the project that they formed, called the Project to Restore America, provided recommendations for many of Trump's cabinet, including Scott Pruitt, Betsy DeVos, Mick Mulvaney, Rick Perry, and Jeff Sessions. So,
Jeez.
Oh yeah, and Jim DeMint was, yeah, there we go. So there's positions and policies. I'm not going to go through all this. There's a ton. Big one that we're going to talk about, that we're going to focus on actually, is anti-LGBTQ, because there's a lot of stuff that's been going on with the LGBTQ issues lately. Opposing reproductive rights and bodily autonomy. So inventing then opposing the individual healthcare mandate, fighting immigration. There were ties to Kochs. No shock there. Now, ties to the Council for National Policy. As I said, Paul Weyrich, and I apologize for the lighting back there. So Paul Weyrich not only founded the Heritage Foundation, he co-founded the Council for National Policy. So Council for National Policy is a secretive Christian white organization of funders and activists founded in 1981 by activist Morton Blackwell, commentator Paul Weyrich, direct mail pioneer Richard Vigueri, right-wing activist Phyllis Schlafly, and the Left Behind author Tim LaHaye. Tim LaHaye is like considered the front man, I guess. Ann Nelson's book about Council for National Policy, Shadow Network, Media, Money, and the Secret Hub of the Radical Right describes how the organization connects the manpower and media of the Christian right with the finances of Western plutocrats and the strategy of right-wing Republican political operatives. So this is the power, part of this whole thing. Political connections is a ton of campaign contributors here that you guys can take a look at. There's a ton of them. I'm just through the F's. So, ton of it. Let's see. Let's see if it's here. I don't know if it's under. I don't remember his first name. I think it's Joseph Coors. The Coors brewing industry. They were the first ones to really fund.
It's not Adolf Coors, is it?
I don't think so. I think it's Joseph. Is it? No, it is Adolf Coors
Foundation.
There you go. 150,000. Well, and they were the ones that seeded it in the beginning too. So, and kind of makes sense after this whole Bush or the Budweiser, whatever, all this stuff with the campaigns, they're positioning themselves against Coors.
Right.
So
it's a nice first name he's got there, Adolf. Pretty appropriate.
Yep. So here we go. Hold on. Let me backtrack a little bit. This is the homepage of the Heritage Foundation. And before I explore some issues, I want to show you, they basically say that they defend right-wing policy. So right off the bat, they're going to have confirmation bias. 7 challenges where our efforts are most needed and where we can do the most good. Empower education choice. Empower education choice. Secure our borders and reduce crime. Ensure free and fair elections. So all this, right-wing talking points.
What about that?
Republican talking points. Shrink regulation, spending, and inflation. Counter communist China. Rein in big tech. Protect unborn life and families. You're just seeing that. Now, how you protect unborn life and families by prying into the medical choices of people. Just saying. So I took a little bit of a deeper look into this thing. So we're going to look at gender real quick. Paul Weyrich was, as I've mentioned before, a homophobe. He tried to denigrate or insult or kind of smear the LGBT lifestyle throughout his lifetime, saying that all gays do is think about sex, say that they're not pure or whatever, whatever. So here's what the Heritage Foundation says about gender. Neither federal lawmakers nor courts should have the power to redefine what it is to be a man or woman for all Americans. They don't do that anyway.
No, they just fight for those who want to go through transition to have the right to go through transition. I mean, no one is forcing this down anyone's throat.
By the way, actually, the Heritage Foundation is trying to seize the power to define what it is to be a man or a woman.
Right.
Not to redefine, but to define what a man or woman is. So learn more about policies that curb government overreach with solutions. I'm just going to click on this for a second. I'm not going to go through all this stuff, but it has kind of guidelines or like a rubric or, like procedures as to, and talking points on all of this stuff. Let me see, there was something on, there we go. So, summary and key talking points, the issue, recommendations, facts and figures, and additional resources. Now, I'm almost afraid to look at their facts and figures, but their big issue here was Oberfell, gay marriage. They hate gay marriage. So, facts and figures. Under state social laws, individuals and organizations have faced lawsuits in various professions for acting in a manner that is consistent with their beliefs about sex and marriage, including.
That's their facts and figures.
Yep. No figures there.
No facts either.
No facts. There you go. That's amazing, actually.
Facts and figures.
So.
Fucking, they must have a little problem identifying what facts and figures.
What a number is. I didn't see any numbers there. Well, 0.
Yeah.
So, just to nutshell, this is the Trump administration. This is what he did for the Heritage Foundation. Left the Paris Climate Accord. That's a big thing for them. Repealing net neutrality. Reshaping national monuments. Nationalism is huge for them too. Reinstating the Mexico City policy, which prevents taxpayer money from funding international groups involved in abortion. And ending funding to the United Nations Population Fund. So on January 23rd, 2017, and I think that was like 2 or 3 days after he was inaugurated, in his first pro-life action, Trump signed an executive order reinstating the Mexico City policy. I don't know what that is. Oh, I guess, okay, the preventing of taxpayer, that what I just read. Increasing military spending, reforming temporary assistance for needy families program.
That was promoting hunger.
Yep. Allowing development of natural resources. Great. Open offshore drilling. That's reforming government agencies, tasking each of his cabinet secretaries to prepare detailed plans on how they propose to reduce the scope and size of their departments. So basically ripping up their departments. And by the way, appointing cabinet members that have no knowledge of their cabinet position, right, like Betsy DeVos, and withdrawing from the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, because they hate science, they hate culture, and they hate education.
Right. They hate culture unless it's white culture.
Right. And they hate education. We just saw that their facts and figures, there were no facts and
Rick
figures.
Santorum was very clear about the fact that there was no culture here until the white man came. I apparently forgot about all those Native Americans who lived here, and actually were quite cultured.
Okay, this is from GLAAD, talking about how the Heritage Foundation has been anti-LGBTQ from the beginning, and how they helped drive anti-LGBT legislation. So also talks about we have Attorney General Matthew Whitaker delivering a speech at the Heritage Foundation defending the Alliance Defending Freedom, and I mentioned what the Alliance Defining Freedom supported by saying that organization should not be designated a hate group for backing anti-LGBT causes. By the way, being anti anything, being anti something that is a group of people is a hate group. So the 12th cabinet or senior level Trump administration official to address this anti-LGBTQ organization in 2 years. Okay. The list, we have Vice President Mike Pence, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, President Trump himself, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, A. Wes Mitchell, Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein, Sessions, Army Secretary Mark Esper, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who, where is she now? She's
president.
She's running for president. And is she in office? No. Okay. She's just running for president, running around and stomping and yeah. Okay.
Hanging around down there and wherever the hell she is, South Carolina.
Alex Azar. Was Alex Azar the guy who, no, he wasn't. Okay. John Bolton, acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker. So, yeah, 2 attorney generals. So they also talk about some basic history going as far back as the early 90s when they attacked the Don't Say Gay bill.
Yep.
Don't ask, don't tell. I'm sorry. In the present instead of the past. Don't ask, don't tell. Because it was compromised instead of a full ban.
Right.
Congress should resolve this issue by passing a law affirming that homosexuality is incompatible with military service. These men and women are volunteering to serve, to risk their lives for their country, whether you believe in the military or not. They're doing that. Giving military commanders authority to screen and discharge homosexuals under any circumstances. Professional military judgment and experience indicate that missing known homosexuals and heterosexuals degrades cohesion and combat effectiveness.
Where's
the data? No data. No data. It is not the individual qualities of the homosexual, but rather homosexuality itself, which is incompatible with military service. Now that's some word salad. Okay. Here's another thing that kind of went off into the weeds on this. You guys can read to your heart's content a little bit about this. In the early 2000s, the Heritage Foundation defended the Boy Scouts of America organization for discriminating against the quote-unquote whining and complaining LGBTQ community. In the opinion of the Boy Scouts, homosexuality is wrong. Those who disagree are free to whine and complain all they want, and even from their own alternative organization, but it doesn't give them the right to try and use the government to force a private organization to alter their code of ethics, a code of ethics which included, but was not limited to, the molestation of boys, starting all the way back, as far back as we know, in the 1980s, and which forced the Boy Scouts of America to declare bankruptcy in 2020. So, which the Heritage Foundation was, I'm sure, aware of this in the 2000s.
And let me just say this. That doesn't mean that the Boy Scout leaders who perpetrated this were homosexuals. They were what we call
pedophiles.
They're not the same thing.
And by the way, that was tried too. It's not the same thing. Okay. Like we've actually talked about this when we talked about Spotlight.
Yep.
It's not about homosexuality. It's about control. Okay. And it's about power.
Right.
And it's about abuse. So here's a couple things about the Boy Scouts. I'm not going to go into it, but you guys can take a look at it. The point being, these guys are a bunch of hypocritical assholes, number one. And number two, they have no data for the stuff that they're saying. And here's another thing that they have recently brought up. So LGBTQ, and this is a ProPublica article from last year, June 14, 2022, by Brooke Migden. LGBTQ advocates, medical professionals respond to a conservative study, by the way, driven by the Heritage Foundation, linking gender-affirming care to a greater risk of youth suicide. I have data here from not only the Human Rights Campaign, but the Brookings Institute, which we mentioned in a short show, as a left-leaning think tank that actually uses data to try to solve problems, God forbid. They bring up the point that transgender youth themselves are at a much greater risk of suicide, no matter the circumstance. Okay, and there's some data, I'll go through a little bit of that. But these right-wingers have skewed this. Okay, a new study from the Heritage Foundation, which I saw no data from this, a conservative think tank, asserts that expanded access to gender-affirming healthcare is associated with an increase of suicide among transgender youth. Now, in order to produce any kind of data, you would need some kind of records. You would need permission from parents, from whatever. That's HIPAA. Yeah. So LGBTQ plus advocates and doctors have claimed that this study is flawed and misleading. Duh. This study is representative of a larger conservative-led push to restrict access to gender-affirming care for minors. So one doctor that I'm going to be talking about a little bit more, a little later on, his name is Jack Turbin. He is a child and adolescent psychiatry fellow at Stanford University School of Medicine. He has done some studies debunking some of these quote unquote theories, or, you know, whatever, on transgender kids. So, and we'll get into some of that too. Once, by the way, Jack Turbin has created peer-reviewed studies. None of these studies that we're talking about from the conservative think tank are peer-reviewed. They couldn't be. They don't provide any data.
Correct.
So, Deb, can you explain what peer review is?
So,
real quick.
Normally, when you have a publication that's got data in it of any kind, you have other scientists try to replicate that data. Or they look at your data and look at how it was used and how it was extracted to affirm that this is, you know, on the up and up, that it has been corroborated in some fashion. That's what all good science does. Now, this is not what the Heritage Foundation does. None of this stuff is peer-reviewed, okay? It basically protects against, you know, falsification of information, or, you know, making up stuff that's not legitimate just to get published. That's what peer reviews are.
And the Heritage Foundation has not bothered to do any of that because they don't care about that. They care about creating messages and talking points that support their far right position. Agenda. Thank you. So, the Human Rights Campaign, this is from 2018. Harrowing statistics from the This is from their staff, by the way. Harrowing statistics from a study revealed alarming levels of attempted suicide among transgender youth. The highest rates among transgender boys and non-binary youth. The findings emphasize the urgency of building welcoming and safe communities for the LGBTQ young people, particularly of transgender youth. Now, when
Can
you
run that for 1 second, the American
Sure.
Academy of Pediatrics.
click on it, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
See, this is what a legitimate study looks like. It's got the methodologies used to come up with this information, where they got the data. This is what its study looks like.
Right.
Okay? This is what it looks like.
And this was from Russell Toomey and Amy Severson and Maura Schramko. Okay. Potential conflict of interest. The authors have indicated they have no potential conflicts of interest to disclose, which means
They're not being paid by anybody.
exactly.
They don't have any relatives working within the organizations that they were studying,
Or in the hospital or whatever.
Right.
Okay. And if they did, either they would remove themselves from that particular study or they would disclose it.
That's right.
Or the people looking at this study would research it, make sure there were no conflicts of interest, and if there were, it'd be reported.
Right. They also have financial disclosure there too.
Yep.
So
authors have indicated they have no financial relationships relevant to the article to disclose. And by the way, we went through this with Andrew Wakefield.
Right.
Okay. So here is an article from the Brookings Institute. They basically are saying that transgender students' rights should not be subjected to partisan feuds, which they're basically slamming on Republicans, to be completely honest with you. And they bring out some data. They talk about 20 states filing a lawsuit in federal court alleging that the Biden administration had overstepped in extending anti-discrimination protections on the basis of gender identity. How dare he? I'm saying. So, there's data on state participation in LGBTQ protections lawsuits, and we have basically the Prevention State Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Now, this was a few years ago, but there is, here we go. So we intend this post as a reminder, grounded in data, that when culture was wars descend upon schools, vulnerable children are often caught in the crossfire. Vulnerable children who are already subjected to an increase in suicidal thoughts. It's certainly the case with transgender students' rights. The data available, limited as they are, reveal clear vulnerabilities among many students who identify as transgender. Now, that Heritage Foundation article, their basis for denying gender affirming care to transgender youth was that, according to them, data, which they never provided, by the way, stated that transgender youth who started gender affirming care therapy or procedures were more at risk for suicide if they didn't tell their parents. First off, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, not every parent is supportive of their choices, number one. But there is no data to support all of that. Now,
First of all, I just want to say this. The reality is, I don't really believe, at least I can tell you from my experience having a transgender child, that any legitimate organization, medical society, would start transitioning with someone under the legal age without parental consent. That the whole notion of that is absurd. Whole notion of that is absurd.
Right.
My own child started transitioning at the age of, let's see, I believe it was 16, with my permission. But had my child decided to go to the facility that we are going to at the age of 16, and do I believe that that facility would have accepted them as a patient? I believe they would not. No.
Right. So here's the thing. Do you really think that the right wing politicians of this country and the Heritage Foundation and all of these Christian nationalists give a flying rat's ass about the suicide rate of transgender children?
I do not.
I do not either. And here is just some, I don't know, anecdotal proof here. I don't know if anybody's heard of this recently. This is an AP article. This was a couple days ago. Montana House Speaker silences trans lawmaker for a second day. Zooey Zephyr. She is a transgender lawmaker.
Elected, by the way.
Elected, by the way.
By her constituents to represent them.
In Montana. Okay. Now, she basically said that if a ban was placed on gender affirming care in Montana, the Republicans would have blood on their hands. And the speaker of this body said, decorum. Until she apologizes, we will not let her speak. This woman, she represents the people in her district, the people in that state, and the people of our country. And she has a right to speak. And they're silencing her.
Was broken by saying that. I've listened to Marjorie Taylor Greene now. Lauren Boebert say some of the most unbelievably hideous things on the floor. I've watched them heckle Joe Biden from the rafters during the State of the Union address. You want to talk to me about decorum? You know what? That's absolutely patently absurd. It is patently absurd, and I believe that that is just beyond the pale. And it really, it's egregious that they've done this to this woman.
Right. Now, here are a couple of examples of after effects of what the Heritage Foundation has done in the past in regards to transgender issues and LGBT issues. This isn't really about the Heritage Foundation anymore, but it's kind of an offshoot. So this is another article based on that individual, Dr. Turpin. I believe that was his name. I want to make sure I get the guy's name right. Yeah, Turbin. I'm sorry, Dr. Jack Turbin. So here's another fallacy being thrown out there. Deb, is your kid just a part of a fad?
No.
No, she isn't. I know that for a fact.
My kid's not into fads to begin with. Neither one of my kids were into fads to begin with. Well, I can't say that. Thalia was into her goth stage for a while, but that lasted about 6 months. But no, this is not, trust me, this is not a fad. Okay, it's just absurd.
It's a craze. What? So, again, there was a study to dispel this stuff. Someone had to actually spend time and research and money and resources to come up with a study, and his name is Jack Turbin. So here is where I'm going with this. We have people from conservative think tanks and from the conservative walk of life, or the right-wing walk of life. Now they're creating these doctors who go on these shows and news outlets and talk about transgender, anti-transgender talking points. I have a point here. SEGM uncovered large anonymous payments funding dodgy science. The Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine is an anti-trans psychiatric and sociological think tank. Members are frequently quoted in British press without any indication that they're anything other than expert commentators. I'm bringing this up for a reason. I'm starting to see these kind of guys in what we have known for many years to be legitimate papers. Okay, and a lot of times these come under the guise of opinion pieces. Okay, but they're opinion pieces and they have no fact behind them. I have a problem with it. SEGM, one of the members of SEGM is Julia Mason, who is the author of this opinion piece that was put in the Wall Street Journal. The American Academy of Pediatrics' dubious transgender science. And they also attack Jack Turbin and say that he should never have been peer reviewed, or it should have never passed peer review. Their credibility has already been attacked simply by their association with this group. So here is the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine. I just heard of this thing. Activist nonprofit organization that is known for miscategorizing standards of care for transgender youth and engaging in political lobbying using misinformation which contradicts the evidence base around transgender healthcare. And that person that I just mentioned, this society, just so you know. So that's one part of this. So that's kind of the extension of, BS. And if you don't think that the Heritage Foundation is going to latch onto this, you're crazy. Here's the final piece. As I mentioned right at the beginning of this, Paul Weyrich also created ALEC, which cookie cutter, they copy and paste a lot of these legislations and they shove stuff through. So a lot of anti-LGBT legislation has gone through an extremely red state. That state is North Dakota. This is the governor of North Dakota. Looks like, I don't know, Colonel Sanders' crazy cousin or something. So there he is, Governor Doug Burgum. So he signed a bill into law that restricts transgender health care in the state, immediately making it a crime to give gender-affirming care to people younger than 18, whether they get parental consent or not. Gender-affirming care for minors has been available in the United States for more than a decade and is endorsed by major medical associations, but has been increasingly under attack by many conservative legislators, including North Dakota, which is just ridiculously red, where lawmakers have passed at least 3 anti-trans bills this year. So we have the North Dakota governor was very busy this past month. He also signed a law banning nearly all abortions. This is the 6-month ban, or I'm sorry, the 6-week ban. My apologies, 6 weeks. Okay. And I have never been pregnant, obviously, but my understanding is it's
Most women
unlikely
don't
you're going to
it's 6
know.
weeks.
Yeah.
Most women have no idea because it's actually, to say you have 6 weeks, you actually only have 2 weeks.
Right.
All right, that's the reality. A woman can be late for her period for many reasons. Stress is one. Eating habits is another. Changing sleep cycles is another. There are many, many reasons why that happens. It's not always, oh, shit, I'm pregnant.
Right.
You know?
Now, the reality here is, as I said, North Dakota is crazy red. The last Republican governor was in 1988.
I mean,
Democratic governor was in 1988. The last senator was Heidi Heitkamp. Her last year was, I believe, 2019, as you said.
I believe.
Yeah, and they have a ridiculous majority in North Dakota, so they can pretty much do what they want. And this is what you're going to get.
Just like, honestly, in Massachusetts, we have a ridiculous majority in the Democratic side, thankfully.
So here, just real quick, list of the governors in North Dakota by history. So we have, the last one was George A. Center from, January 1985 to, oh, okay, I see. They split the, I guess that's the lieutenant governors. So that's why I got the 1988. So from 1985 to 1992, he was in office. And since then, been all Republican. Okay. Which gives you stuff like this. So we have the trans athlete ban put into law from kindergarten through college. Despite the fact, by the way, that the North Dakota governor admitted there has been no transgender athlete of record for decades. So this isn't really an issue. He's being proactive.
Call it a preemptive strike.
It's a preemptive strike. By the way, the same thing with gender affirming care. To the best of his knowledge, there's been nobody asking for it. So who cares? What does it matter? Nobody's asking for it anyway. Why not preemptively deny somebody their rights in case they want to move to North Dakota? Who, I don't know why you would want to, but whatever. So here's the last one. North Dakota governor vetoes the transgender pronouns bill, basically allowing teachers to address a child by the pronoun they wish the teacher to address them by. Teachers have to address students by their pronoun prescribed at birth. And by the way, despite the fact that no child of record has asked to be asked by their pronoun other than the one assigned to them by birth. So why would anyone care? Come on. I mean, on the off chance that somebody actually would want to move their family to North Dakota,
I'd rather be shot out of a cannon, frankly.
I'm just saying, but it makes no sense to me. But you are preemptively stripping people of
rights
their
that
sovereignty
they haven't asked for yet.
that they haven't even asked for yet. Now, I would imagine the bigger issue for North Dakota would be the abortion ban.
Right.
Okay, right now, but who knows? Maybe a contraception ban. As I said, contraception ban. You know that biracial marriage is coming. I'm telling you right now, I can see restrictions on healthcare medications or mental health care medications, rather. I can see it coming.
The bottom line is, look, the bottom line is this. If you look at the whole mifepristone issue, right?
Right. Yeah.
That will open the door for them to be able to go after anything, including vaccines. I mean, there's a whole cadre of things, and don't think that they don't know this when they do this.
Right.
Okay? Don't think that they don't.
By the way, attacking on medical marijuana again. Okay, people just want to get high. Kratom, Prozac.
Right.
Okay, Valium.
Right.
Whatever. So I'm just saying that it's not their business. It's between you and your doctor. Most doctors, medical professionals, they don't want to get sued. They're going to prescribe things to you that they think are going to help you.
Right.
Most of them, not all of them, but most of them. Maybe some of them from the right wing prescribe you garbage or, supplements that don't do anything. Or ask to take your kid's blood from a birthday party like Andrew Wakefield. I'm just saying.
They're paying $5 a piece.
It's amazing. So what I am saying here is the right wing typically produces no evidence for the arguments that they produce. They're just producing talking points out of their rear ends, or they skew data already produced by other organizations, by the CDC or the WHO or whatever, or they contradict them and say, "Oh well, evidence shows," with no evidence.
Right.
And by the way, one thing, and I don't think I mentioned this in the other short show. The left wing tends to they gravitate towards wanting to look at both sides. There is no other side when it comes to ripping the rights away from someone.
No,
ripping, and I'm not talking about something in which safety is a genuine concern. Okay, seatbelts, vaccines, which have been around forever, maybe in the beginning. Okay, maybe in the beginning with the COVID vaccine. But after it was tested, retested, no. Okay?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I can't even understand why at the beginning with the COVID vaccine.
Right.
Other than the fact that the right wing constructed a bunch of shit around the COVID vaccine. I wasn't worried about getting the COVID vaccine. I got my measles vaccines. I've gotten I've gotten every vaccine I can get. I still haven't gotten my, I got the pneumonia vaccine. I didn't get the flu yet, but yeah. I got my flu vaccine. The only thing I haven't gotten yet is my shingles vaccine, and I'm getting that too.
By the way, what was the big thing? I believe it was Pfizer. It was like 5 cases, and they temporarily removed it over a handful of cases.
Right.
That's how hardcore they are about this.
People need to understand this. You've got, 7 billion people worldwide getting these vaccines. You are going to have some that are going to have adverse reactions. You cannot possibly test and retest enough times to be perfectly confident in saying that 7 billion people, no one's going to get sick from these things. No one knew they were allergic to penicillin until they tried it.
Right.
Come on, folks. Let's get real here.
They're going to have people. There are going to be people with pre-existing conditions or rare conditions or whatever. That one case in wherever it was, Mississippi or whatever, where the woman had an adverse reaction to the vaccine. That's why you sit in Walgreens or wherever, or CVS or wherever you get it for like 15 or 20 minutes, because they check to make sure you're okay.
Right.
Because they can't check for every single thing.
Right.
They want to make sure that you're all right, that you're all right to drive, because you may have some kind of adverse reaction to it, albeit extremely rare. So they've taken every precaution. But the right wing, they latch on to any kind of data that doesn't confirm the left wing's story.
Right.
Okay, and I understand the left wing one. And by the way, the Brookings Institute follows data, and the thing is, data will contradict each other. To have overwhelming data that says 100% this is extremely rare. I don't know if it ever happened really. There's very rarely if ever an instance where there's 100% causation of anything.
There's never an indication that anything's 100% effective either. People have gotten pregnant on birth control. It happens. Okay.
Right. Yep.
It happens. But the VAERS system, that isn't the bottom line on, anybody can put anything in the VAERS system at any time. You're allowed to go on there and put in there, my grandmother got the vaccine. She died of a coronary yesterday. Let's make an assumption. Those things have to be verified before they can be tied to something like that. That's just raw information from the public.
Now, I will give a challenge to anybody on here before we leave here. Show me empirical data of anything, whether it be against transgender rights or anything like that, empirical data provided by the right wing, provided by the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, whoever. Show me the data, because I don't see any. They come up with nonsense and stories. I hardly ever see facts and figures from them. And when they do, they skew them to where where it suits them. As I said, it says it right in the Heritage Foundation's website.
Right.
We support right-wing values. And we're not going to, and again, it's the Christina Pushaw plan. Anything that supports our point of view, we're going to push. Anything that doesn't, we're going to suppress. That's what it is. And for anybody more, by the way, I mentioned this too, stop fighting with each other on the left. Okay? Let's come to some kind of consensus. And before we start beating the hell out of each other, let's fight the real enemy and get rid of these guys, because they're going to push stuff farther and farther to the right. We have Charlie Kirk, guys like Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes calling Marjorie Taylor Greene too soft. Right. Okay? And at some point, they might even run for office. So we got to get it together.
Yeah.
Okay? Please. I'm asking, Deb and I are not going to be around that much longer in the grand scheme of things. To the Gen Zers, if any of you guys are listening, it's not completely on you. We're going to help you as much as we possibly can. But you guys are going to be around longer than us. Okay? We'll give you some of our money knowledge, but don't just sit around and wait for things to happen.
I'm going to tell you another thing. I don't want to hear the Gen Zers are going to save us.
No.
I don't want to hear that shit. You know what?
Oh, that was another short show I wanted to do, but
you know what? We're all in this together, folks. Let's act like that. You either want democracy or you want fascism. Whatever you're unhappy about in a democracy, you're not going to find the solution in fascism. I promise you. All right.
But by the way, whether you're a Gen Z or a baby boomer, a Gen X or a Gen Y or whatever, especially the Gen Zers because they're the younger generation. Okay. You want to represent your group, whatever, your generation. When you have a job, come to work on time, do your job. Okay, I'm not saying you don't. Or if you see someone not doing it, and especially if they're another Gen Zer, tell them you're making us look bad. Okay, there's enough young people out there in my job that aren't doing the right thing. Okay. And they're making that generation look bad. Now, I'm not saying the baby boomers ain't better. I tell everybody, as a union rep, I tell them, as a group, if you guys don't do your job, you're making the whole group look bad. So Deb and I talk about it all the time, how, young people, they're privileged. And when they, we complain about people, in work situations all the time, so you want the bare minimum, do what you're supposed to do. Be nice to people. Don't be nasty to people if you can help it, and go to work, do your job, do what you promise people you're going to do,
And vote.
And jury duty, by the way, because you know what? If you don't do it, guess what? Some scumbag right winger is going to go in there and do it. Oh, by the way, the police officer that killed that young man, I believe it was in Minnesota, she got out after a year, just so you know. So I just thought about that.
Yeah. That's
So,
right.
and the system doesn't always work. It doesn't. But what else do you have? Okay, if you give up on this system, we were there too. All right, we were there too. That the people have to take over. No,
Don't say self-governance either.
no. No.
I gave all of that daydreaming up when I got a load of the American people in the pandemic. We're not capable.
After January 6th, that was the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Like a week or so after that, when we had that one stream, that was it. We saw it. It was over.
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, that's what we have for this week. I'm thinking next week I might do something on the press. Listen, we have to, as information seekers, we have to call bullshit out for what it is. Stop giving the other side credence by not questioning the other side and saying, well, we have to look at both sides. If the sides don't have an argument,
You don't when it's bullshit.
you don't when it's bullshit. And it actually stunned me. This Wall Street Journal thing stunned me. Okay, shouldn't, because it was one that I'm going to bring back from the New York Times. Again, they're bringing back talking points. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Okay, there's no data to back it up.
Right.
If you have data to back it up, bring it and we'll look at it.
Right.
But that's what we're saying. There is no other side to the argument if there's no data or evidence to back that other side of the argument. And then that's the spin doctor organization that the Heritage Foundation is, and ALEC, by the way, and all of that.
Yep.
So
Okay,
thanks, guys.
We'll see you Sunday next week.
See ya.
Bye-bye.